Captain Lee Tae-ho stood in the vast crystal chamber and felt very small. The Galactic Council Hall was bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up like a mountain around him. Their eyes watched him with cold interest. Some had too many eyes. Others had none at all but seemed to see him anyway. The air smelled wrong. It was clean but had no life in it. Everything here was perfect and cold. Lee Tae-ho missed the smell of earth rain and coffee shops. He missed imperfection. Dr. Park Mi-young stood beside him. She was the smartest person he knew. Her hands shook just a little as she held her datapad. They both knew this meeting would change everything for humanity. Above them floated Counselor Vextai. The aquatic being moved through a water bubble that let her swim in the air. Her tentacles moved in patterns that the translation device said meant displeasure. She had been speaking for 20 minutes about human crimes. The species called humans, Vextai said in her bubbling voice, have violated 37 galactic accords in just 50 Earth years since first contact. Lee Tae-ho wanted to speak, but the council rules said he must wait. The waiting was the hardest part. He watched as holographic images appeared in the air above them. Pictures of human colonies on distant worlds. Pictures of human ships that looked rough and patched compared to the smooth alien vessels. Pictures of humans working alongside species that the council called primitive. They terraform worlds without permission, Vextai continued. They share advanced technology with lesser species. They refuse to follow proper expansion protocols. Most dangerous of all, they reproduce at an alarming rate and spread their chaotic influence wherever they go. Prime Kethron rose from his section. The insectoid being was ancient even by council standards. His chittering voice carried the weight of 10,000 years of galactic law. The humans claim they seek peace, yet their military grows stronger each day. They build weapons we do not understand. They make alliances we did not approve. They ask questions we do not wish to answer. Lee Tae-ho felt his anger rising. These beings talked about humans like they were a disease to be cured. Every word made his people sound like monsters, when all they had done was try to find their place among the stars. The council showed more images. Human children playing with young aliens. Human doctors treating wounded beings from a dozen different species. Human engineers fixing broken ships for anyone who asked. To Lee Tae-ho, these looked like good things. To the council, they looked like chaos. They do not understand hierarchy, said a crystalline being whose name the translator could not pronounce. They treat all species as equals. This disrupts the natural order we have maintained for millennia. Dr. Park Mi-young whispered to Lee Tae-ho, "They are afraid of us because we change things." She was right. The council had ruled the galaxy for so long that they forgot what change looked like. They made laws that kept everyone in their place. The strong stayed strong. The weak stayed weak. Nobody moved up or down. It was stable, but it was also a cage. Now humans had arrived, and nothing was stable anymore. Humans helped primitive species develop new technology. They asked why some beings had more rights than others. They ignored laws that made no sense. They treated enemies like future friends and friends like family. The council called this dangerous. Lee Tae-ho called it hope. Finally, Vextai gave him permission to speak. Lee Tae-ho stepped forward, and his voice echoed in the huge chamber. "Honored counselors, we come in peace. Everything we have done has been to help others and find our place in this galaxy. We have made mistakes because we are young and still learning. But we have never deliberately harmed anyone." Whispers filled the chamber. Some aliens had never heard a human speak before. Lee Tae-ho tried to put all his passion into his words. "You show images of our colonies and call them violations, but every world we have settled was empty or dying. We brought life to dead rocks and poison to no one. You show our partnerships with younger species and call them chaos. But we have only shared knowledge and friendship. Is this not what civilization should do?" Prime Kethron's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. The human speaks of civilization, while his species has existed for mere moments in galactic time. What can children teach their elders? Sometimes children see things that adults have forgotten, Lee Tae-ho replied. We see species that you call primitive building beautiful art and solving problems in new ways. We see beings you ignore creating music that moves the soul. We see potential where you see only categories. Dr. Park Mi-young stepped forward and activated her data pad. The chamber filled with new images. Human cities where dozens of species lived together. Schools where human and alien children learned from each other. Hospitals where any being could receive treatment regardless of their world or status. This is what we build, she said. Not chaos, but community. Not disorder, but diversity. We believe every thinking being has value and deserves a chance to grow. The council chamber erupted in noise. Some beings cheered while others hissed or made sounds of anger. Vexatai had to use sonic dampeners to restore order. The humans make pretty speeches, said a gaseous being whose words came through artificial speakers. But they multiply too fast and spread too far. In 50 years, they have claimed more territory than most species gain in 500. At this rate, they will dominate the galaxy within 1,000 years. Lee Tae-ho felt cold fear in his stomach. The council was not just annoyed with humanity. They were terrified. They saw humans as a threat to their power and their way of life. No amount of good intentions would change that. The debate continued for hours. Some council members spoke in favor of giving humans more time to conform to galactic law. Most spoke of the need for action before humanity became too strong to control. A few suggested complete isolation. Several recommended what they called pacification protocols. Dr. Park Mi-young had been recording everything. During a break, she pulled Lee Tae-ho aside and showed him data she had gathered from public council records. I looked up every species. They have labeled as a Class 5 existential threat in the past 10,000 years, she whispered. There were 17 of them. Where are they now? Lee Tae-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. Extinct. All of them. The council used pacification protocols to remove them completely. The voting began as the council session resumed. Representatives from 859 different species cast their decisions. The process took 3 hours. Lee Tae-ho and Dr. Park Mi-young watched in growing horror as the numbers appeared on the massive display screens. 847 votes for declaring humanity a Class 5 existential threat. 12 votes against. 0 abstentions. Vexte swam to the center of her bubble and spoke the formal declaration. By the authority vested in this council by 10,000 years of galactic law, we hereby declare the species known as humans to be a Class 5 existential threat to galactic stability and order. They are given 1 standard galactic year to withdraw all presence from space beyond their home system. Failure to comply will result in the implementation of pacification protocols as defined in Emergency Code 77 Alpha. The chamber fell silent. Lee Tae-ho felt the weight of billions of human lives pressing down on him. Dr. Park Mi-young was already calculating how long it would take to evacuate every human colony and station. The numbers did not look good. As they prepared to leave, a small crystalline being approached them. It moved carefully and spoke in whispers. I voted against the declaration, it said. My people remember what it was like before the council brought order. We lived in constant war. The council brought peace, but also stagnation. Your species offers something different. Something we had forgotten was possible. What is that? Dr. Park Mi-young asked. Growth, the being replied. The chance to become more than we are. The council fears this because it threatens their control. But some of us remember when growth was considered good. The being handed them a small data crystal. This contains information that may help your people. Use it wisely. Then it melted back into the crowd before they could ask more questions. Lee Tae-ho and Dr. Park Mi-young left the council hall with heavy hearts, but also with determination. Humanity had 1 year to prove they deserved to live among the stars. The council expected them to give up and go home. They had no idea what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. The war for humanity's future had begun, and the enemy had fired the first shot. Now it was time for humans to show the galaxy what they were really made of. The news reached Earth 18 hours after the council vote. President Kim Jae-min sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath Seoul and watched the faces of his advisors turn pale as they listened to Captain Lee Tae-ho's report. The room was silent except for the soft hum of air recyclers and the distant rumble of the city above them. 1 year, Admiral Choi Sung-woo said slowly. His weathered hands gripped the table edge. They give us 1 year to abandon everything we have built. And if we refuse? Asked Defense Minister Han So-young. Dr. Park Mi-young activated the holographic display. The image of a dead world appeared above the table. The surface was glass and ash. No life remained anywhere. This was Kepler 442b. The Altarians lived there until the Council declared them a Class 5 threat 800 years ago. The planet still glows with radiation. President Kim Jae-min studied the image of the dead world. He was a former teacher who had never wanted to lead a planet, much less defend one against the might of the galaxy. But the people had chosen him, because they trusted his judgment. Now that judgment would determine whether humanity had a future. How many humans are living outside the Sol system? He asked. 47 million across 53 colonies and stations, replied Colonial Administrator Park Eun-seo, plus another 12 million on ships and mobile platforms. We cannot evacuate them all in 1 year even if we wanted to. Which we do not, Admiral Choi added firmly. Those colonies represent 30 years of human sweat and blood. We will not abandon them because alien bureaucrats feel threatened. President Kim Jae-min activated the global communication system. Within minutes, he was connected to every human settlement from Mercury to the edge of Centauri space. Colony governors, ship captains, station commanders, and research team leaders all appeared on the massive display wall. My fellow humans, the president began, today the Galactic Council declared our species too dangerous to exist among the stars. They demand we return to Earth and never leave again. They threaten to destroy us if we refuse. Angry voices erupted from dozens of colonies. Captain Yoon Da-hee spoke from the bridge of her patrol ship near Alpha Centauri. Mr. President, my squadron stands ready to fight. We will not surrender the freedom our ancestors dreamed of. Nor should you, President Kim replied. But we face an enemy with technology thousands of years more advanced than ours. Ships that can crack planets. Weapons that can burn solar systems. If we fight them the old way, we will lose. He paused and looked directly into the camera. So we will not fight them the old way. I am issuing Executive Order 2157. All human assets outside Earth are to begin immediate convergence operations. This is not a retreat. This is a gathering. Admiral Choi Sung-woo took over the briefing. Every ship, every station, every colony will contribute to our defense. We will pool our resources, our knowledge, and our capabilities. When the Council comes for us, they will face not scattered settlements, but a united humanity. The response was immediate. Colony ships began loading their most valuable equipment and research data. Mining stations started sending rare minerals toward Earth. Research outposts transmitted decades of scientific discoveries to the Central Archives. Dr. Shin Ho-jun worked in his laboratory on Titan and felt hope for the first time in days. The quantum communication project he had been developing with help from the silicon-based resonance was finally ready for full implementation. If it worked, every human facility in the galaxy could coordinate in real time, regardless of distance. He activated the first transmitter and held his breath. Across the solar system, matching devices received his signal instantly. No light-speed delay, no distortion. Perfect communication across billions of kilometers in 0 time. This changes everything, whispered his assistant, Dr. Lee Min-ji. The Council thinks in terms of slow communication and isolated commands. They will not expect us to coordinate like this. The Resonance had shared this technology freely when humans helped them relocate from a dying star system. The Council had forbidden such aid, calling the Resonance too primitive to save. Humans had ignored the law and rescued an entire species. Now that kindness was returning in the form of impossible technology, similar stories played out across human space. The aquatic deep swimmers shared advanced stealth technology in gratitude for human protection of their breeding grounds. The insectoid. Builders offered manufacturing techniques that could produce ships in days instead of months. The energy beings called spark dancers taught humans how to harness stellar power directly. None of these species were considered worthy of Council membership. All of them had been helped by humans when no one else cared. Now they risked Council punishment to aid their human friends. Commander Yoon led her squadron on a reconnaissance mission to the edge of human space. Intelligence reports suggested Council fleets were already massing in preparation for the pacification protocols. She needed to know what humanity was facing. Her ships used new stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. They slipped past Council patrol vessels and monitoring stations like ghosts in the void. What they found in the Vega system made her blood run cold. Thousands of Council warships floated in perfect formation around the blue giant star. Each ship was the size of a human city. Their weapons could turn planets into rubble. Worse, these were just the advanced scouts. Long-range sensors detected larger fleets gathering in dozens of systems. They are not planning to capture or contain us, Yoon reported to Admiral Choi. This is an extermination fleet. They mean to kill every human in the galaxy. Back on Earth, engineer Han Gi-tae received this intelligence with grim determination. His teams had been working around the clock to develop new defensive systems. Human technology was primitive compared to the Council's ancient weapons, but humans had advantages the aliens did not understand. Humans were adaptable. When one approach failed, they tried another. Council species had used the same tactics for thousands of years. They knew what worked and stuck with it. Humans constantly experimented and improved. Humans were cooperative. Council species fought alone or in rigid alliances based on mutual benefit. Humans formed friendships across species lines and shared everything freely. Their alien partners contributed technologies and insights that no single species could have developed alone. Most importantly, humans were desperate. The Council fought to maintain their comfortable order. Humans fought for their right to exist. Desperation bred innovation in ways that comfort never could. Han Gi-tae's team tested their first prototype defense platform in the asteroid belt. It looked like nothing special, just a collection of metal and crystal components floating in space. But when activated, it created an energy barrier that could deflect particle beams and absorb kinetic impacts. The technology came from combining human engineering with resonant crystal matrices and deep swimmer energy channeling techniques. No single species could have built it. Together, they had created something revolutionary. Similar breakthroughs happened daily as the convergence continued. Human ships arrived at Earth carrying treasures beyond measure, not gold or jewels, but knowledge and friendship. Scientists from dozens of species worked together in laboratories orbiting Earth. Engineers shared techniques that had been kept secret for millennia. President Kim Jae-min received a secret communication from an unexpected source. Counselor Vextai appeared on his private screen late one night, her aquatic form swimming nervously in her life support bubble. "President Kim," she began hesitantly, "I voted for the declaration because I feared for galactic stability, but I have been studying your species more carefully since then. I have questions." "Ask them," Kim replied simply. "Why do your people risk their lives to save beings they have never met? Why do you share your technology with species that cannot repay you? Why do you refuse to accept that some beings are naturally superior to others?" Kim thought carefully before answering. "Because we believe every thinking being has value. Because we know that helping others makes us all stronger. Because we have learned that those who claim natural superiority usually just fear fair competition." Vextai's tentacles writhed in patterns that indicated deep thought. "The Council maintains that order requires hierarchy. That stability demands some rule, while others obey. Your species threatens this by treating all as equals. Perhaps your order has become stagnation," Kim suggested gently. "Perhaps your stability has become a prison. We do not seek to rule anyone. We seek only the freedom to grow and help others grow as well." The conversation continued for an hour. Vextai asked about human history, human values, and human dreams. She seemed genuinely puzzled by concepts like democracy, individual rights, and voluntary cooperation. "On my world," she finally said, "the strongest swimmers lead because they can survive the deepest pressures. This has been our way for millions of years. The idea that leadership could be chosen rather than inherited through strength is alien to us. Yet here you are questioning your leader's decision," Kim pointed out. "Perhaps strength is not the only quality that matters in a leader." After Vextai disconnected, Kim sat alone in his office and wondered how many other council members might be having similar doubts. The galaxy was vast and contained countless species with countless perspectives. Ambassador Kang Soo-jin had spent her entire career learning to speak with aliens. She understood the clicking languages of insectoid species and the harmonic frequencies that energy beings used for communication. But tonight, she faced her greatest challenge yet. She had to convince sworn enemies to work together against the most powerful organization in the galaxy. The meeting place was a dead moon orbiting a forgotten star in neutral space. No council ships patrolled here. No monitoring stations watched for illegal gatherings. It was the perfect place for treason. 12 species had sent representatives despite the enormous risks. Some came in secret, defying direct orders from their governments. Others came with official backing from leaders who had grown tired of council rule. All of them came because they had seen what humans were capable of and wanted to learn more. Kang Soo-jin floated in the center of the spherical chamber, surrounded by beings who had every reason to distrust each other. The Kravak delegation sat, across from their ancient enemies, the ethereals. The crystalline resonance maintained careful distance from the acidic dissolvents. The aquatic deep swimmers and the fire-breathing pyrokin had never agreed on anything in 3,000 years of shared history. "Thank you all for coming," Kang Soo-jin began, her words translated into dozens of languages by the chamber's sophisticated systems. "I know this meeting puts you all at great risk. The council does not forgive those who question their authority." War Chief Thakmar of the Kravak spoke first. His scarred face showed the results of countless battles. "We have served the council for 800 years and received only restrictions in return. They fear strong warriors, so they keep us weak. The humans show us there is another way. The humans are naive children who do not understand Galactic politics," replied Councillor Zixara, the crystalline being who had secretly aided humanity during the original trial. "But perhaps that is precisely what we need. They see problems we have learned to ignore." Kang Soo-jin activated the holographic display at the chamber's center. The history of the galaxy unfolded in light and color. 10,000 years of council. Rule played out in fast motion. Expansion, conquest, control, and finally stagnation. "This is what the council calls order," she said, as images of unchanging alien civilizations filled the space around them. Billions of beings living the same lives their ancestors lived for millennia. No growth, no progress, no hope for anything better. The display shifted to show the 17 species that had been declared Class 5 threats throughout galactic history. Each had shown rapid advancement or refused to accept their assigned place in the Council's hierarchy. Each had been systematically destroyed. The Altarians developed faster-than-light communication that could have revolutionized galactic society, Kang Soo-jin continued. The Council destroyed them to maintain control over information flow. The Dreamweavers created art so beautiful, it inspired other species to question their rigid social structures. The Council eliminated them to preserve stability. Delegate after delegate leaned forward as the true history of Council rule became clear. These were not the gradual extinctions they had been told about. These were deliberate genocides committed to maintain the status quo. "Why should we believe human propaganda?" asked Ambassador Silthara of the Ethereals. Her energy form pulsed with skeptical colors. "How do we know these records are accurate?" Councillor Zixara answered before Kang Soo-jin could speak. "Because I provided them. I have served on the Council for 2,000 years and have access to classified archives. Every image you see is real. Every extinction was planned and executed to eliminate threats to Council authority." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They were not just watching history. They were seeing their own potential futures if they continued to grow too powerful or too independent. Engineer Hangi Tai appeared via quantum communication link from Earth. Behind him, the orbital shipyards worked around the clock to prepare humanity's defenses. "We are not asking you to fight for us," he said to the assembled delegates. "We are asking you to fight for yourselves. The Council fears change because change threatens their power. But change is the only way the galaxy can grow." He showed them technical specifications for the defensive systems humanity was building. The designs incorporated knowledge from every species present. Kravac metallurgy made the hulls stronger. Ethereal energy manipulation improved the weapons. Resonant crystals enhanced the shields. Deep swimmer stealth technology made the ships harder to detect. This is what cooperation looks like, Han Gite continued. Not the rigid hierarchies the Council demands, but voluntary partnerships where everyone contributes their strengths. Together we can build things that none of us could create alone. War Chief Thokmar stood and drew his ceremonial blade. The Kravac have decided. We will stand with humanity against the Council. Our fleets are already moving to join the human defense forces. The announcement sent shockwaves through the gathering. The Kravac were not a major power, but they were respected warriors. Their open rebellion would encourage others to act. Ambassador, Silthara pulsed with uncertain colors. The Ethereals have no love for the Council, but we are not warriors. What can energy beings do against planet-killing weapons? You can do what you do best, replied Dr. Bei Youngmi, joining the communication. From her laboratory on Luna. You can manipulate energy in ways no other species understands. We have ideas for weapons that could turn the Council's own power against them, but we need ethereal expertise to make them work. The debate continued for hours as each species weighed the risks and benefits of rebellion. Some had suffered under Council rule for millennia. Others had prospered within the system and feared losing their privileged positions. All of them understood that this decision would shape the future of galactic civilization. Counselor Zixara made the next crucial revelation. The Council is not united on this issue. The vote to destroy humanity was not unanimous among the leadership. Several species voted against the measure but were overruled by the ancient powers who founded the organization. Which species opposed the declaration? Asked Kang Sujin. The Aquarians, who value life above order. The Gardeners, who believe in nurturing growth rather than controlling it. The Philosophers, who think the galaxy needs new ideas. Even some of the founding members have private doubts about the wisdom of genocide. This information changed everything. The Council was not the monolithic entity it appeared to be. There were cracks in its unity that could be exploited. Engineer Han Gite shared another crucial piece of intelligence. Our reconnaissance missions have detected massive fleet movements throughout Council space. They are not just planning to eliminate humanity. They are preparing to suppress any species that might support us. This is about more than one extinction. This is about crushing any hope of change in the galaxy. The implications were clear. Even species that remained neutral would eventually face Council retaliation if they showed any signs of independence. The choice was not between safety and danger. It was between slavery and freedom. Over the next several hours, alliances began to form. The Kravac and the Ethereals agreed to set aside their ancient enmity. The Resonance and the Dissolvents found common ground in their shared desire for scientific advancement. The Deep Swimmers and the Parokan discovered that their opposite natures could complement each other in unexpected ways. Kang Sujin watched with amazement as barriers that had existed for millennia crumbled in a single night. These species had been taught to distrust each other by a council that benefited from their division. Working together, they were far more powerful than the sum of their parts. The meeting's climax came when War Chief Thokmar made a formal declaration. The Free Species Coalition is born tonight. We reject council authority over our development, our alliances, and our future. We claim the right to grow, to change, and to choose our own destiny. One by one, the other delegates added their voices to the declaration. Not all of them committed their entire species, but enough agreed to participation to create a meaningful resistance movement. Counselor Zixara provided the final piece of the puzzle. I can give you intelligence on council fleet movements and strategic plans. But more importantly, I can identify other council members who might be turned to your cause. The organization is older and more brittle than it appears. Applied pressure in the right places could cause it to fracture. As the meeting ended, Kang Sujin felt hope for the first time since the original council declaration. Humanity was no longer facing extinction alone. They had allies now, and those allies had other allies. The galaxy was waking up after 10,000 years of enforced sleep. The delegates dispersed to their home worlds to begin the dangerous work of organizing resistance. Some would face execution if their treasonous activities were discovered. Others would need to work in secret, while maintaining the appearance of loyalty. All of them understood that failure meant not just their own destruction, but the end of any hope for change in the galaxy. Back on Earth, President Kim Jae-min received Kang Soo-jin's report with mixed emotions. The alliance was encouraging, but it also meant that human actions had sparked what could become a galactic civil war. Fleet Admiral Lim Hyun-sik stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Unity and watched the enemy fleet emerge from hyperspace. The sight should have filled him with despair. Thousands of Council warships materialized at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of deadly stars. Each vessel was larger than any human ship. Their weapons could crack moons. Their shields could withstand the fury of a star. But Lim Hyun-sik did not despair. Around Earth floated the most diverse fleet in galactic history. Human ships flew, alongside Kravak destroyers and ethereal energy vessels. Resonant crystal formations pulsed with defensive power, while deep swimmer stealth craft vanished into the void. This was not just humanity's last stand. This was the galaxy's first real chance for freedom in 10,000 years. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Captain No Ji-won from her position at the tactical station. Her stealth squadron had spent weeks infiltrating Council supply lines and gathering intelligence. The enemy was powerful, but not invincible. They had weaknesses that could be exploited. "Council fleet is transmitting surrender demands," reported Communications Officer Park De-young. "They want us to power down our weapons and prepare for pacification." "Send our reply," Lim Hyun-sik ordered. "Tell them that humanity chooses to stand with our friends rather than kneel to our executioners." The Council response was immediate. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids lanced across space toward the human fleet. But those beams struck nothing but empty void. The human ships had already moved, scattering like leaves in a storm wind. This was the first shock for the Council fleet. Human tactics were unlike anything in their ancient playbooks. Council doctrine emphasized formation fighting and overwhelming firepower. Human strategy relied on mobility, unpredictability, and the element of surprise. Captain No Ji-won's stealth ships struck first. Invisible to Council sensors, they slipped past the enemy's outer perimeter and targeted communication relays. Explosions bloomed silently in the vacuum as critical systems failed. Suddenly, the massive Council fleet found itself partially blind and deaf. Dr. Bae Young-mi watched the battle from her command center on Luna and felt a mixture of terror and pride. The weapons her teams had developed were performing beyond expectations. Resonant crystal arrays focused stellar energy into cutting beams that could slice through Council armor. Ethereal energy manipulators turned the enemy's own power against them. Kravak kinetic weapons hit with the force of small meteors, but the Council fleet was far from helpless. Ancient as their tactics might be, their raw power was still overwhelming. Planet-killer weapons charged with malevolent energy. Force. Fields that could deflect nuclear explosions shimmered around enemy hulls. When the Council ships finally organized their response, the destruction was terrible to behold. The human destroyer Courage vanished in a flash of antimatter fire. The Kravak cruiser Blood Honor broke apart under gravitational stress weapons. An entire squadron of ethereal ships dispersed into component energy when their cores were destabilized by quantum torpedoes. "We are losing ships faster than we can replace them," General Ryu Seok-jin reported from his flagship. "We need to change tactics or this becomes a war of attrition we cannot win." Lim Hyun-sik had been counting on this moment. The Council fleet was massive and powerful, but it was also predictable. Their commanders had been fighting the same way for millennia. They expected enemies to either flee in terror or die in glorious but futile last stands. They did not expect humans to learn and adapt in the middle of a battle. "All units execute Plan Omega," the Admiral commanded. "Show them what chaos really looks like." The human fleet suddenly abandoned all pretense of conventional warfare. Ships that had been fighting in formation scattered across the solar system. Some dove toward the sun, using its gravity to slingshot into unexpected attack angles. Others headed for the asteroid belt, turning chunks of rock into kinetic weapons. A few actually charged directly at the enemy's largest ships, gambling their lives on close-range attacks. The Council fleet tried to respond but found their targeting computers overwhelmed by the sheer unpredictability of human movements. Weapons designed to hit predictable targets missed wildly as human ships changed course every few seconds. Formation algorithms collapsed as the enemy refused to stay in formation. Captain Ko Dong-hyun led a desperate attack run against the Council flagship. His ship Valley Forge was tiny compared to the massive dreadnought, but it carried a weapon that no Council tactician had ever seen before. A quantum resonance bomb developed by combining human physics with resonant crystal technology. The run should have been suicide. The flagship's defensive systems could track and destroy 1,000 attacking craft simultaneously, but Ko Dong-hyun's ship was not alone. Ethereal vessels provided energy shields that confused enemy sensors. Deep swimmer stealth technology made the human ship nearly invisible. Kravak interceptors drew defensive fire away from the primary target. Valley Forge penetrated to within a few kilometers of the flagship before releasing its payload. The quantum bomb phased through the enemy's shields as if they were not there, then detonated inside the ship's core. The massive vessel did not explode. Instead, it simply ceased to exist, its component atoms scattered across several dimensions. The destruction of their flagship sent shockwaves through the Council fleet. For the first time in their ancient history, they had lost a dreadnought to inferior technology. Panic began to spread as ship commanders realized their technological advantage was not as overwhelming as they had believed. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. General Ryu Seok-jin had launched boarding pods towards several Council vessels, knowing that his Marines faced almost certain death. Council ships were designed to be impregnable fortresses. Their internal defenses could slaughter any boarding party in minutes. What the Council did not expect was for humans to board their ships not to capture them, but to save them. Marine Sergeant Kim Won-ho led his squad through the corridors of a Council destroyer, dodging energy weapons and automated defenses. But when they encountered enemy crew members, they did not shoot to kill. Instead, they provided medical aid to wounded aliens and protected non-combatants from the chaos of battle. "Why are you helping us?" asked a dying Council soldier, his forearms clutching wounds that human medics were trying to heal. "Because you are someone's child," Kim Won-ho replied simply. "Because every life has value. Because we believe enemies can become friends if they are given the chance." The same scene played out on a dozen Council ships as human Marines risked their lives to save enemy wounded. Word spread through the Council fleet faster than their commanders could suppress it. These humans were not the mindless killers they had been told about. They were beings who would die to save strangers. Counselor Vexatai received these reports aboard her command vessel and felt her worldview cracking like ice in spring. Everything she had been taught about human nature was wrong. They were not selfish monsters who threatened galactic order. They were idealists who valued life above victory. She opened a private communication channel to Admiral Lim Hyun-sik. "Admiral, I wish to speak with you." "I am listening, Counselor. Why do your people save our wounded when we came here to destroy you?" Lim Hyun-sik was quiet for a moment, then replied, "Because we hope that when this battle ends, your people will remember that we offered friendship instead of hatred. Because we believe that understanding is stronger than force. Because someone has to break the cycle of violence if the galaxy is ever going to change." Vexatai's tentacles writhed with emotions she had no names for. "You are either the most naive beings in the galaxy or the wisest. I am no longer certain which." The battle was reaching its climax. Despite their initial successes, the human fleet was being ground down by superior numbers and firepower. Too many good ships and brave crews had been lost. The mathematical reality was brutal and clear. Humanity could not win through military force alone. That was when Counselor Vexatai made the most important decision of her life. She activated the emergency override codes that only senior Council members possessed and broadcast on all frequencies throughout the massive enemy fleet. "Attention all vessels of the Council Pacification Force. This is Counselor Vexatai with an emergency declaration. I invoke Article 12 of the Galactic Charter and call for immediate cessation of hostilities pending a full investigation of the circumstances leading to this conflict." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Council ships throughout the fleet began powering down their weapons as commanders tried to understand what was happening. Vexatai's authority was absolute in matters of galactic law. Even fleet admirals had to obey a properly invoked emergency order. "Counselor, this is Admiral Ketheron commanding the Pacification Force. By what authority do you contradict direct orders from the full council? By the authority of 10,000 years of precedent and the evidence of my own eyes, Vextai replied. I have witnessed humans risk their lives to save our wounded. I have seen them offer friendship to species we declared their enemies. I have watched them build alliances based on mutual respect rather than domination. This is not the behavior of a species that threatens galactic stability. 6 months after the battle for Sol, President Park Min-ho stood before the largest gathering of sentient beings in galactic history. The new Federation Assembly Hall orbited the ancient star Sagittarius I, chosen because it belonged to no single species and had no history of conquest or domination. Representatives from over 200 different civilizations filled the vast chamber, and for the first time in 10,000 years, they were all equal. Park Min-ho had never wanted to be president of anything, much less president of a galactic federation. He had been a teacher on a farming colony before the war, content to help children learn about the universe. But the species of the galaxy had chosen him not for his ambition, but for his wisdom and his complete lack of desire for power. Friends, he began, his words carried by translation devices to every corner of the chamber. We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, not as rulers and subjects, but as partners in building a future worthy of our children. The audience was remarkable in its diversity. Aquatic beings swam in life support bubbles, while crystalline entities communicated through harmonic resonance. Energy beings pulsed with colors that conveyed emotions no solid creature could understand. Insectoid hives spoke with 1,000 voices, while gaseous collectives shared thoughts across vast distances. All of them had come together because of what humans had proven possible. That different species could work together as equals. That strength came from cooperation rather than domination. That the galaxy could be ruled by hope instead of fear. Ambassador Oh Seo-jung sat in the human delegation and marveled at how much had changed. The old Galactic Council chamber had been designed to make individuals feel small and powerless. This new hall was built to encourage participation and dialogue. Every seat was positioned so its occupant could see and be seen by all others. The transformation had not been easy. When the Council's authority collapsed, many species had tried to settle old grievances through violence. Others had attempted to grab territory or resources left undefended by the chaos. Pirates and warlords had emerged to prey on the weak. But the coalition that had formed around humanity proved stronger than the forces of chaos. Species that had been enemies for millennia found common ground in their shared desire for freedom. The Kravak and the Ethereals worked together to hunt down raiders. The Resonance and the Dissolvents combined their technologies to rebuild damaged worlds. Most importantly, they had all learned to ask for help when they needed it. The old council had taught that requesting aid was a sign of weakness. The new Federation declared that offering aid was a sign of strength. President Park Min-ho continued his address. The being who ruled through fear told you that order required hierarchy, that some must command while others obey, that change was dangerous and stability was the highest virtue. Today we prove them wrong. He gestured to the diverse assembly around him. Look at what we have built together in just 6 months. Worlds that were dying have been restored to life. Species that were kept weak have grown strong. Technologies that were hoarded by the few are now shared by all. This is not chaos. This is what civilization looks like when it is allowed to grow. Captain Ko Dong-hyun watched the proceedings from the observation gallery. His ship, Valley Forge, was being repaired in the orbital shipyards that surrounded the station. The quantum bomb attack that had destroyed the Council flagship had also severely damaged his vessel, but alien allies had contributed resources and expertise to make her stronger than ever. The shipyards themselves were a testament to the new cooperation. Kravak engineers worked alongside resonant crystal smiths to build vessels that combined the best technologies of dozens of species. The ships looked unlike anything that had come before. They were beautiful as well as functional, artistic as well as practical. Ko Dong-hyun's crew was almost as diverse as the ships they built. His tactical officer was a young ethereal who could manipulate energy with her thoughts. His chief engineer was a resonant whose crystal body could interface directly with the ship's systems. His communications specialist was a deep swimmer who could detect signals across multiple dimensions. They worked together not because regulations required it, but because they had become friends. Trust had replaced suspicion. Curiosity had replaced fear. Hope had replaced despair. Director John Yun-ji managed the technology exchange programs that were transforming galactic civilization. Her offices on Earth received thousands of requests daily from species wanting to share knowledge or learn new techniques. The old council had restricted such exchanges to maintain their control over advancement. The new Federation encouraged them to benefit everyone. The results were spectacular. Medical techniques that had been jealously guarded by their inventors were now saving lives across hundreds of worlds. Agricultural methods were turning barren planets into garden paradises. Manufacturing processes were providing abundance where scarcity had once ruled, but the most important exchanges were not technological. They were cultural. Art forms that had been hidden for millennia were now shared freely. Music from 1,000 different species created harmonies that had never been heard before. Stories and philosophies crossed species lines to inspire new ways of thinking. John Yun-ji particularly treasured the children's cultural exchange programs. Young beings from different worlds worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. They painted murals that combined visual techniques from dozens of species. They composed symphonies that incorporated sounds no single race could have produced alone. Most importantly, they played together. Games and sports that crossed species barriers, friendships that ignored ancient prejudices, dreams of a future where being different was celebrated rather than feared. President Park Min-ho reached the climax of his speech. The old rulers declared humanity too dangerous to exist among the stars. They were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they thought. We were not dangerous because we were strong or warlike. We were dangerous because we offered something they could not tolerate. We offered change. The chamber erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Applause mixed with harmonic resonance, chittering, and complex energy patterns that conveyed enthusiasm across the spectrum of possible communication. Today, Park Min-ho continued, we declare that change is not a threat, but an opportunity. Growth is not chaos, but evolution. Diversity is not weakness, but strength. We reject the old way of ruling through fear and choose to lead through hope. Former Councilor Vex-Tai floated in her water bubble and listened to the human president with emotions she was still learning to name. 6 months ago, she had been part of an organization that ruled through ancient tradition and unquestioned authority. Today, she was an elected representative of her people in a government they had chosen to join. The transition had been difficult for her species. The Aquarians had accepted council rule for so long that many had forgotten how to make decisions for themselves. But with human help and encouragement, they were learning to govern democratically. It was messy and sometimes inefficient, but it was also fair and just. Vex-Tai thought about her conversations with human leaders during the war. They had shown her that leadership did not have to be inherited through strength or imposed through force. It could be earned through service and maintained through the consent of the governed. The idea had seemed impossible at first. How could the weak choose who would rule them? How could those who had never led understand what leadership required? But she had watched human democracy in action and seen that ordinary beings were capable of extraordinary wisdom when given the chance to participate in their own governance. War Chief Thokmar spoke for the warrior species when the formal session concluded. The Kravak have spent 800 years serving masters who kept us weak. Today we choose to serve an ideal that makes us strong. We pledge our ships and our lives to defend this federation against any who would destroy it. His words carried special weight because everyone knew he could have chosen differently. The Kravak were now free to expand their military as much as they wanted. They could have become conquerors themselves instead of protectors of peace. But they had learned from human example that true strength came from defending others rather than dominating them. Similar pledges came from species across the galaxy. The Resonants offered their crystal technology to improve communication across impossible distances. The ethereals promised to share their energy manipulation techniques for peaceful purposes. The deep swimmers volunteered to explore unknown regions of space and find new worlds for expanding populations. But the most moving pledge came from the youngest member of the assembly, a small being whose species had been contacted by humans just weeks before the war began. She spoke with the clear voice of innocence that cut through all the complex politics of galactic governance. "My people have a saying," she chirped in her high-pitched voice. "The flower that grows in many colors is more beautiful than the garden of single blooms. Humans taught us that being different is not wrong. Today we promise to teach our children that friendship is stronger than fear." The formal ceremonies concluded. Delegates began to mingle in the reception areas surrounding the main chamber.